Todd Samra Music is the channel, but the show is called Dr. Todd Talks Tunes. What we have going on in essentially what I call the rise of pluralism or early pluralism are a rise in these national styles. And it culminates with World War I. Because World War I was all about nationalism. This is all connected. Nationalism in music, though, really became innocently related to write about what you know. So when we listen to Dvorak, we hear Bohemian music. When we listen to the music of Vaughan Williams, we hear English and Welsh styles. That's what the composers are writing, what they know. And they're trying to get back to a part of their heritage as part of their own self-discovery. Remember that art reflects what people are thinking, what they're feeling, what their search is, the Enlightenment, which helped to give birth to people like Beethoven. And in a sense, that was born out of what had gone on in the French Revolution and Napoleon. So all of these things are connected. In America, we tended to fall in love with the Broadway musical. And that is a developing form of entertainment. And that is a key part of the rise of pluralism. Because the earliest examples of pluralism that we really have are found in American music, because America is trying to find its identity. What is America's nationalism? We're a melting pot of all of these different things. And so when Dvorak came over in the 1890s and was writing the New World Symphony, instead of using Bohemian elements like he had done in Symphony 7 and 8 and whatever, Symphony number 9, he borrows American elements. And what did he borrow? Music from African-American culture. He's like, America, your national music is connected to basically the African-American spiritual. So we have that. Jerome Kern comes around with Showboat on the Broadway stage and has the best song in the show sung by a Black character, Old Man River. It's the best song in the show. We also hear Fish Gotta Swim and Birds Gotta Fly, sung by a white woman, singing in the style of an African American. That's the first time that happens. So this acculturation in America is what defines American music. European elements, European American elements, African American elements, combining together. That's what makes America special. That's pluralism by definition. And over time, it's going to overtake the rest of the world. It's going to become pervasive, this combining of elements around the whole world. But it starts in America. America is really very quite different. So we get things like Showboat. Then we get Porter with Anything Goes. And even in the Met, we have the Gershwin brothers doing Porgy and Bess. Me loves you, Porgy, where the speech style of that opera was based on African-American dialect. And sure, it wasn't a huge hit in Manhattan in the 1930s, but it's highly regarded as a great work of art today and is often performed. It's a very significant work. So these are the buds. These are the beginnings of this pluralism that the Beatles are eventually just going to hammer in. We have developments going on that are related to urban centers like St. Louis, New Orleans, Chicago, New York City. And then we have music that is developing rurally, like Appalachia, like Iowa. So we have different styles that are both founded in the blues. But we start to see throughout the 20th century, especially the middle part of the 20th century, a division between urban blues and rural blues. So urban blues is the forerunner of rock and roll. It's really the forerunner of jazz, which comes before it. Those are connected to urban blues. Rural blues is more connected to things like bluegrass, country music in particular, gospel musics. All of those types of subgenres are really more connected to rural blues. So when we're examining the music in this course, we are looking more at what is happening over here on the urban side of things, because that's really the music that was eventually going to inspire the Beatles. Really, when we look at this development of rock and roll, it's really coming out of that urban blues stream. As a matter of fact, it's still fundamentally blues. Now, before we get into this, remember that by definition, rock and roll, in order to be rock and roll, has to be about wine, women, or song, or as we like to say today, sex, drugs, or rock and roll, about the virtue of just rock and roll itself, which there's a whole lot of examples of rock and roll that are like that. So if it isn't about one of those three things, by definition, it's not rock and roll. And the first one is key. That rock and roll was a euphemism for sex. I'm a rockin' and a rollin' all night long. So that's really, by definition, what it means. So the chief subject matter was sex. And these developed at these like rent parties where people would have a party, they'd go buy a bunch of alcohol, and then every person that walked through the door would have to pay a flat fee. And then they could drink all they want. And they provided entertainment and people danced. And that entertainment that developed in these rent parties specifically was music that was highly, highly sexualized, because that's what people wanted. They're drinking, they're dancing, they're carrying on. They wanted things that were naughty. This is not mainstream culture. It's like a subculture going on. And so the music very, very directly reflects that. My pencil don't write no more.
Now listen here, folks, that one thing sure, because the leads are gone. Oh, the leads are gone. The pencil won't write no more.
This picture says it all. Look at the hands. Look at this. Look at this grabbing. She's lifting up her skirt, showing some leg. What's going on back here? I don't really know. But we got some music going on. We got some alcohol sitting out right here. And we got a performer playing on a guitar. This picture kind of speaks 1,000 words as to what a rent party might look like. Simple musical elements. You can hear the influence of the blues. The way it's patterned.
I got a brand new skillet. I've got a brand new lid. All I need is a woman, says to burn my bread. Let me put my banana in your fruit basket, then I'll be satisfied.
And if we listen to the music elements, we've got swung rhythm, bump, ba bump, ba bump, not regular meter, bump, 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 swung rhythm. We have simple chord structures, 1, 4, 5, chromatic alternates, a little bit like that. But then the rhythm is a repeating thing so that we can dance, so we can kind of get our groove on out there and do our thing. And so we got that kind of that rhythm. And you don't really need very many players. You can have just a guitar player, you could have guitar and bass. Maybe you've got drums if somebody's got a bigger apartment, because that adds some boom. So, you know, it's some basic, maybe somebody's playing a piano. Just these simple elements. And so guitar, bass, piano, drums are all kind of connected to rock and roll from the very, very beginning. And remember that part of this is a reaction to swing bands on purpose, keeping it more intimate, smaller scale. So as rock and roll grows, the band doesn't need to grow. to make things louder because we got technology now, baby. We got amplifiers. So we'll just take the same group of people, small group of people, but now we'll amplify them a lot so that lots of people can hear them. And that's how rock and roll grows. Swing music developed out of Dixieland music, which were like 5-person bands. And eventually, instead of having a trumpet, a clarinet, and a trombone, we get trumpet sections, trombone sections, and saxophone sections. So that's kind of how swing music and the swing band grows to get louder, bigger, more exciting, bigger performances, bigger halls, right? As part of that development, rock and roll only needs the amplifier. So rock and roll very much is a direct reaction in many ways to the popularity of swing bands, especially during the 1940s. And we need to keep that in mind when we look at such great artists as Fats Domino and Little Richard in particular, and also Bill Haley. I want to point out that this music, this genre of music, sure, from the very beginnings, it's owned and was developed by African Americans. But it doesn't take very long before we get people like Bill Haley involved. And we start to see, and eventually we get Elvis involved. And then that's going to start to see the world change then. So it's very important that we look at this rock and roll culture as being a combination of both Black and white artists.